Today, we will have a robust and interactive conversation that will draw upon the cultural, philanthropic, and governmental experiences of our very distinguished panel. Some biographical details are on our website, but even that does not fully capture the breadth of experience that will be speaking to us today. However, I'll take a short moment to say a word about each panelist. We are joined today by Her Royal Highness Princess Camilla of Bourbon-Two Sicilies. She was born in Italy, was internationally educated, became an astute businesswoman, and is a mother to 2 wonderful daughters. The princess is involved in many philanthropies all over the world, and some of them include being president of the Friends of the Scientific Center of Monaco and the Princess Camilla of Bourbon Charitable Foundation, which focuses on the environment. The princess is joined by her husband, His Royal Highness Prince Charles of Bourbon-Two Sicilies. He is head of the royal house and Duke of Castro. His family lineage is connected to nearly all the royal European bloodlines. The prince has prior experience working in public relations in New York and Italian companies in Europe. He dedicates his time on the charitable initiatives of the Constantinian Order of St. George. His Excellency Ambassador Giorgio Maripodi is the Italian Director General for Development Cooperation within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His diplomatic career spans over 33 years of impressive experience with postings in New York, the Italian embassies in Madrid, Brussels, leading European Union negotiations, and serving as ambassador to Austria. His Excellency is on the advisory board of the first United Nations Food Systems Summit that will take place in 2021. We also have Daniel Kropp with us. He is an Italian-born entrepreneur. Amongst many accomplishments, he founded what is now called Gamida for Life Group, a healthcare consortium with a presence in France, Israel, UK, Turkey, and Bulgaria. Daniel is a member of the Synergos Global Philanthropist Circle and is founder and chair of the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, which focuses on intergenerational partnerships. And last but not least, we have Hyacinth Gooden-Bailey. She is a certified global life transitions coach. She has had a distinctive international career, having taught languages in Jamaica and worked on a global scale with the United Nations. Her main target now is inner wisdom and connection with the divine. She is the author of many papers and published the book, The Power in Praying A to Z. So with these distinguished persons, I would like to start by giving the floor to our CEO, Henry Van Eegen, who will extend an official word of welcome. Henry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Claudia. And let's not make it all too official. It is very much about interaction together with us for the next hour or so. And yeah, I reflected when I heard that beautiful story on Louis Carrillo coming from the Azores, where I did spend some time with my wife. And one of the interesting things about the Azores is that the weather, it's a very small place altogether, even the biggest island. So the Azores has this tremendous thing of having very nice weather on one side and completely different weather on the other side. And maybe that's about life. And then maybe that's about our discussion today too. That which we confront as we confront different things, like we confront COVID, and we talk a little bit more about what has happened in Italy, but we talk about it from really 2 sides, both in terms of what has happened within communities as they react to a situation like this in a very positive way, and positive things going forward in energy, and at the same time realizing that the situation has really created quite a havoc for a lot of people. So I'd like to welcome again, I think Claudia did very well by welcoming Princess Camilla and Prince Charles and Giorgio Maripodi, as well as Daniel and Hyacinth Bailey. It's absolutely great to have you all here, and I'm very much looking forward to our time together. Peggy, please.
Thank you, Henri, and it's a pleasure to see, or at least see the names of everybody who's on. I think we will probably all agree, if we don't already, when we hear the panelists speak, that the world we're in now, post-COVID, and the impact on the economy, on the planet, all of this that is happening anyway, but more intensely after the COVID crisis, which is in fact still underway, that we need a different kind of leadership. And so my contribution for today is to tell you briefly about Synergos's main focus, which is on a style of leadership. And I actually saw in at least those who participated in the one-word statement of what kind of leadership we need, very much the qualities that we see as needed: compassion, ability to listen, empathy, and I would add to that, I didn't see it yet in the list, ability to reach out across divides, which implies having done enough of our own personal work so that we're not threatened by people who are different from us, and in fact welcome the diversity that we as a human people represent. So that is our main focus, and we're developing not only a curriculum, but also in some way all of these webinars that we're hosting have to do with either how we can further develop our own inner self-confidence and compassion, and the other qualities that I mentioned, but also what are the actual techniques and skills that we can all acquire to be better bridging leaders, so that the rifts, whether they are across horizontal groups in societies, tensions between different ethnic groups or different ideologies, etc., or we might say vertically between those that have greater privilege and those that are actually at the bottom of the pyramid and have very little access to information, education, economic income, etc. So this is what we focus on, with the aspiration of creating a more harmonious, sustainable, and just world. And we see this webinar as a way of focusing in on one issue and how one country is working to rebuild after the crisis that it faced, as a way of taking away perhaps some lessons for ourselves on an example of how bridging leadership both was practiced, but also might be further strengthened in that context. So with that, I think we can begin with our panel, and Claudia, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you so much for framing the bridging leadership aspect. I'm going to start with the first question for Her Royal Highness Princess Camilla. And when you reflect back to March of this year, when Italy closed its borders and the seriousness of the COVID-19 situation sunk in, how did you feel and what actions did you take?
Okay. First of all, it's been a real shock. It's been a real shock for us Italians because, as you can very well imagine, we have been, I would say, the country who has been hit first by this incredible disaster and this terrible health dramatic COVID. And Italians, of course, were not prepared like nowhere else, but Italians we are a culture of very warm people who love to have contact with other people. It's all about having really a sense of big heart Italians. And so this terrible COVID, when the news came up and when we all realized, especially politicians and business people and people all over Italy realized that there was a real sanitary emergency, we were more than shocked. It's been very difficult on Italians because not only we had to go through immediately taking action, but we had no example in front of us. Now it's easy when you start seeing all of Europe who has been affected by the virus and now the rest of the world. But at that time, of course, I was almost incredibly amazed. I almost didn't believe what I was actually seeing, that the airports were closing, that the hospitals were getting full, that every day we had more and more people passing away and victims. And it's been terrible. It's been terrible on the human side. And it's been terrible to see Venice, Florence, Rome, where I'm from, just completely going empty from one day to the other. The police was very, very severe, very strong. We had drones and police all over. And Italy really wanted also to serve as an example, saying it's a real problem, it will get to all of you. And this is what we are taking courageously action to try to save as many people as possible from being infected. So I reacted, I was very, very saddened, very worried. And my husband and I have always been very much aware that we are, of course, more privileged than many other people maybe, but we also have a lot of wanting to help people, and we have a lot of care for the more needy people. So we immediately felt also very stressed, I would say, because we could not really go out and help in the hospitals or go out to help the homeless, which we often do, and continue all of the charities which we do. So for us, it was frustration. It was trying to understand how we could help the country, what would be our role, but a very, very practical role. We wanted to do practical things. And I think that Italy has managed I'm sure that you can agree, has managed to organize themselves very well, has given an example again, how it's a great country, how people sometimes are Italians full of life, but when a business or discipline or an emergency comes along, they all get very much united. And I'm very proud to be Italian, and I'm very proud to participate today to this virtual meeting that is really about Italy and COVID. And of course saddened that the country is now have to start again the post-COVID, and I have my own business, so I know how it has affected the economy. It's terrible. Tourism, it's terrible as well, but we really we have to start all over somehow. But I want to be positive. I think that Italy has a lot of inside secrets, in the sense that we have a lot of positiveness in Italian nationality. And I think slowly but surely we will slowly try to overcome this economic crisis, which you can really, it's very tangible in Italy. You can really feel it in so many people, from very wealthy people to people who are less wealthy. Everybody is really going through the aftershock. I think there is no business in Italy who has not suffered. And of course, the tourism is Italy's the tourism, it's the restaurants, it's the food, it's the style, the fashion. And all of that today is going through a very severe crisis. So I'm very, very happy to be able to discuss and to hear the other panelists, and to be able to express my own experience for my daughters and myself, and of course my husband. It's been very tough, because being Italian, it's been particularly tough. And sometimes also when you have Italian passport, I remember just at the beginning, they say, Italians, they're infected. Yeah? It's funny, but it has hit me really in the heart.
Yes, thank you for that. We all had a great solidarity with Italy. We all felt Italians for a moment there when the outbreak occurred. So thank you for sharing your feelings about it. I'll turn towards your husband now and say, Prince Charles, in relation to what your wife just said and your work as Grand Master of the Constantinian Order of St. George, can you share with us some information? Was the order engaged in any activities for COVID?
Yeah, sure, of course. But thank you, Claudia. I wanted to say that I'm, first of all, very happy to participate to this conference, virtual conference. And I want to express my special thanks to Peggy Delany. But to answer your question, we, as mentioned my wife, we at that time were hit by the first country was Italy. We were just arrived in France, and for us it was, we were watching TV every day, and we were like really shocked and really, as you say, we were afraid of the situation, because we were seeing every day the expansion of the numbers, the deaf people and So we were like, wow, it's incredible because it's going to go out of Italy for sure. Unfortunately for Northern Italy, which has been hit much more, let's say Lombardia and Veneto, unfortunately Southern Italy has been less hit, but we were really, we wanted to do something through the Constantinian order. So I really wanted to do myself and my family be involved in helping people and structure and hospital, especially in Southern Italy, because, you know, in Northern Italy, it's a region which is much more rich, and they had helped, many people helped and raised money for Northern Italy. So I said, if by this race, let's say, the COVID goes to Southern Italy, it's going to be a disaster. So we started this online platform, and we raised, well, almost a little bit more than $250,000. But it's not the money, it's the fact that we had helped in 9 regions, the 7 regions of Southern Italy, plus the region of Lazio, which is south of Rome, Gaeta, and also in Lombardia, in Brescia. So we helped the hospitals. We gave some artificial
respiratories, yes, to be able to breathe.
So each time was a different concept. I mean, we were asking the different structure, what do they need? So was a mask, for example, FFP2, or it was the protections or the gloves, because at that time we did not realize, but we lost our sovereignty, health sovereignty, because we were depending, as a lot of other countries, of the Chinese, because they have all the stuff. And so it was very, very, very difficult to get those, as you all know. So we tried anyway to, we did also a special center post-COVID, which was quite interesting. And fortunately, I must say that, for example, in Naples, the hospital called Cotugno, they have been really fantastic, because there were very, very, very few cases. And even the doctors and the infirmière, the nurses were not affected there. So they really had a special way to treat this pandemic situation. But anyway, we did what I can say. We tried to do, as my wife was saying before, we tried to do our best and try to be, even if we were locked down like everybody else, you know, with these new technologies, now you can go through and speak to the people. And we managed to help 12 structures, hospital and healthcare houses, and that's it.
You are a high-ranking Italian official. You have been right in the hotspots of the European outbreak. What are your observations on the COVID-19 situation, not from a health perspective, but perhaps a development cooperation perspective?
Yes, thanks, Claudia. I also want to thank Synergos and Peggy, and of course yourself, for having organized this webinar. I wish to thank the whole team of Synergos. Discussing of Italy and COVID-19 is of course an important opportunity for me, and I'm grateful for that you have decided to focus this webinar on the Italian situation. As it was said by yourself and also by the other friends that were speaking before me, the COVID-19 pandemic has been an extraordinary and unexpected happening in the course of our times, but you say in the course of our lives, of our societies, our world. We saw how a microscopic entity has dramatically impacted the world and changed it in a matter of months. This This is a crisis, a global crisis, as we all know. That is at the same time a health, economic, social, development, humanitarian crisis, and it has affected all the countries in the world. I was seeing some of the words that were put by the speakers in the chat. Compassion, empathy, let me add also solidarity. I do it now. Solidarity, I think, is it's an important word that should guide us in this difficult time. This multidimensional aspect of the crisis has required the international community to act immediately and simultaneously on all those aspects. Italy, as it was said, was at the front line of the pandemic for being the first major Western country to be affected. The country needed to face an unknown situation for which there was no model. There wasn't a model of action that we could replicate. We had no silver bullet for the COVID-19. Nevertheless, we gathered together in Italy all the efforts of every single actor, all the institutions, all the actors of the civil society all together to cope with it. At the same time, Italy has been called to continue its international cooperation actions while responding internally, as I was saying. We have kept our international action. As you asked me to say something from the side of the international cooperation, well, I would say that Italy has responsibly played a very proactive role, both in, let's say, in terms of confirming our current actions in areas such as food security, health, education, socioeconomic support, building resilience while building up together in partnership with key partners such as the European Union, a COVID-19 global response capable of both addressing the crisis for our citizens, the Italian citizens, but also for the European people, but also for the people from the most vulnerable countries. In record time, we set up together with the other actors, with the EU, but also with important private foundations. We set up new multilateral initiatives, such as the ACT Accelerator, that you all know of, supported by an international alliance to ensure acceleration and universal equitable distribution of diagnostic, therapeutics, and a vaccine against COVID-19. We have worked also with the European Union and with every single member state of the European Union. We have built this Team Europe to bring together billions of euro, as we had a meeting of the Director Generals of the European Union a few days ago, and we have been able all together to put together 36 billion euros in international cooperation and support to the fragile countries, to the most vulnerable countries, mostly in Africa, of course, but all over the world. And also, as Italy took also the initiative of building up a food coalition to deal with the potentially dramatic consequences of disruption of food chains, production and distribution, particularly in the most vulnerable areas of the world. Since the beginning, the Italian Development Corporation has been working tirelessly in partnership with the other actors to provide bold, innovative and effective solutions. We didn't stop for a single day. I mean, so while we were all together in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs working for strengthening relationship with our partners, but also to receive the solidarity from many countries with which are our partners that we have been helping in the past and that we are also helping in the present in those difficult moments. We have received a lot of solidarity also from these countries. As it was said, it was a moment when it was difficult in Italy, but all over Europe to get the items for personal protection, and we have received a lot of solidarity from all over the world. So we were not stopping one day, working around the clock for both the helping the Italian situation, improving the Italian situation, but at the same time, we didn't want to stop our action in support of our friends around the world, not even for one day. I would stop here for the moment, Claudia. I hope I didn't take too much time.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much. And it's always nice to get a perspective from somebody who's actually in the governmental system, such as yourself. So thank you for that. There are some questions accumulating in the chat box, but before I speak to them, I'm going to ask Daniel Kropf to say a word, and then we'll take the questions. So Daniel, you have been a member of the Synagogue's Global Philanthropist Circle for many years now. And as founder of the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, you place a great importance on working not for children, but with children. Does this also apply to the COVID-19 pandemic, and did you use any bridging leadership activities?
Okay, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Claudia, and a warm welcome to everybody else. I think I've been called to speak to this meeting because I happen to be Italian, but I'm living in Amsterdam now. And I have seen from distance what was happening in Italy with quite a lot of worry. My family lives in Trieste, but nobody has been touched. Living here, I have had quite an opportunity to actually reflect one of the main questions that has been bothering me is how do we create and support the development of a fairer and more sustainable world? And the word inclusion has come back to me on an ongoing basis. I have been working for inclusion for many years with the CEGI to support inclusion from a religious, ethical, gender, and sexual orientation. But today, the issue are very much how to include people from different socioeconomic conditions, and how do we include people of all ages. And we have seen the impact that the pandemic has had both on children because they lost their voice, particularly at the beginning, and for adults that found themselves in adults with white hair like me, who have found themselves a bit in the risk category, so to say. For me, the most important focus is in fact on children, and if adults want to have authentic relationship with children, this pandemic time or lockdown, I hope has given adults a lot of reflection about their inner world and how can they actually carry out an authentic relationship with children. If adults are willing to give up power with children and make decisions together with them, they are likely to gain in spontaneity, vulnerability, out-of-the-box thinking, and creativity, and fun. Because children, when you work with them, they want to have fun and enjoy doing things. For adults who have lost their connection with their inner child, it's like they're losing the connection with their soul, and therefore move into more of a fear and ego-driven situation, we at the Learning for Wellbeing Foundation have developed an approach for human development, which is holistic and systemic and inspired by nature, which includes the spiritual and the soul perspective. And we apply this approach to relationship, and particularly to the relationship between adults and children, wanting to support a global alliance toward a greater inclusion of children in the decision-making in government. And for that, as a foundation, we have included on our board a parity between young people and adults in order to make decisions about what do we do and how we apply ourselves. And we see how many young people actually before COVID had come out to ask the adult to partner with them. And I think after this pandemic, so to say, we really need to reflect more deeply and more profoundly how we will partner with children to create the future. So I wanted to leave you with these thoughts. The foundation is operating in Israel, in Palestine, in Bolivia, in Europe through partners, but I won't go into details about that because we are not operating directly in Italy. I'm just the Italian friend of Synergos sitting here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And you're absolutely right. Out of the box thinking is indeed necessary. And this ties into some of the questions. And I'm just going to read one from Peggy, actually. And she said here, you know, given that the health and resulting economic crisis will continue for some time, she's curious as to what the panelists' strategies might be for addressing this aftermath and recovery. So is there any out of the box thinking there? Does anyone want to speak to their strategies?
I have run a business for many, many, many years, high-tech, satellites, software. We controlled Italian airports for over 35 years in Italy. All of the Italian airports were controlled by my family and myself in the past 10 years. So, well, the strategy is that, of course, we have a lot of people working from home. This and government is present to try to help us. I think that we will have to try to economize all our strength and our funds, and people have to try to reinvent a new way of working. And I think that unfortunately there will be a lot of people that will lose their job, will get fired. There is a reorganizations that we all have to do. Anybody who has a business will have to reorganize the business. It is sad, but it is a question of survival. So, and I think that the government is going to be present. The Italian government, although it's tough because of course the economy is not very good in our country, but it is a government that helps people. At a certain point, you can imagine the government gave €1,000 to every person that needed €1,000 to survive. Anybody could go up to the government and ask for just €1,000, and the government for the past 3 months were there to help. And my husband's staff, for example, he has a lot of staff as well, and they are working from home, but they are really helped by the government. They are helped in every possible sense, medical help. And so I think that the whole idea is to try to reorganize ourselves in the best way possible.
Thank you so much for, responding to that. We have a lot more questions, but we also have to respect our time today. So we're going to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak in smaller groups very soon. We're going to have breakout sessions. And in the run-up to the breakout session, I asked Hyacinth Bailey to join us. She's a certified life coach, and she engages coachees in inner work and reflective inquiry to transcend unexpected transitions, which is exactly what we're all experiencing right now. And she's going to frame our breakout discussion. So I'll give the floor to Hyacinth, and then afterwards I'll tell you what to do for the breakouts.
Thank you, Claudia, and Peggy Delaney, and with Synergus, and esteemed panelists for sharing this space with me. These are indeed urgent times requiring urgent action. As the future speeds towards us, there will always be the question, how do we move forward from here? In that regard, there are many factors to consider, so I hope you'll bear with me. If we ever questioned the concept of global before, we are now thoroughly convinced that whatever affects one affects all. In my allotted time, I want to make some brief observations about disruption and healing, as well as about new leadership and what it should look like in the wake of the pandemic before we move into the breakout sessions. Let us first condense what our global experience over the past 5 months has brought us to, with just some brief phrases: uncertain times, unknowns in every field, death, pain, loss, and an inevitable new normal to navigate. Most importantly, there is the obvious need to deliberately redirect resources to the most neglected, most vulnerable, and the systemically and systematically deprived. The invasion of the invisible virus, though it qualifies as a disruption, has served not only as a shift, but as a shaking up. I dare say that it could be seen as a necessary disruption, even though we would not want to wish any kind of pandemic on ourselves, and we are grateful to be still alive. This disruption did many powerful things, which would make the word disruption more synonymous with opportunity to learn or moving toward enlightenment rather than with disaster. Our experience in America revealed many specific things, among them where and who the most vulnerable and neglected people are, inherent weaknesses in structures, and surprising unpreparedness in both the medical and healthcare field and others. And isolated individuals likely discovered what are true priorities, what are useless ways of living, and where to place value in life. To compound the matter, in addition to the pandemic, we have the peaked anger and demand for change to get away from the pervasive and centuries-old racism in the socioeconomic and legal system, as well as loss of businesses, jobs, and income. That tells you how complicated recovery from disruption in this 21st century is. It means that no arrogance from world leaders or business leaders is required. The recognition that we're all learners is the first essential global understanding. We will continue to be in transition as the landscape for healing changes. Beneficiaries of social intervention will also have to learn trust in a new way, since they have been burnt so many times before. If we're anxious about healing and how that will take place, my first thought is, why do we expect healing before we have addressed whatever are the root causes of what threatens our global community? We have not yet fully grieved over the tens of thousands who have died, and we're still working through our own personal and private grief curve. Yes, we do heal day by day, or we would not get out of bed sometimes. I think what we've been neglecting is our spirit, building our spiritual consciousness, and what I name as spiritual acuity is key to renewing our energy, changing perspectives, and seeing visions. All three mentioned are necessary moving forward: energy, perspective, and vision to achieve personal and planetary well-being. In the wake of COVID-19, the urgency is for soul searching and for making things right. The urgency is for changing outlooks and for visionary strategy to create long overdue equity across the globe. Can true healing take place amid chaos and states of hopelessness? Healing will come as well-intentioned interventions increasingly include access to mental and psychological support, while each person adjusts at their own pace. How may leadership at all levels make a dent or a difference at all in the face of uncertainties and unknowns? Firstly, there are many habits to unlearn. And then there are those neglected skills that need to be learned. I will reduce those mindsets to be unlearned to two. One is the total single-minded competitive approach. And two, exploiting and excluding those who are perceived as voiceless. Now, how will new leadership at every level show up? I will only refer to three things here. By being intentional in making space for other minds to flow and for other voices to collaborate in any change. With readiness to shift and reinvent processes and procedures as often as necessary. And third, empathizing with those in their charge and with those they serve, thereby being the lead comforter when people hurt. Neuroscientists have confirmed the active neuroplasticity of our brains. So there's no doubt that new learning can be absorbed, deliberately replacing and negating what needs to be unlearned. It follows then that a new set of selection criteria and determination of who are allowed to lead has to be activated in all areas of society. As we shift into a new zeitgeist, leaders and leadership teams must rescript the future continually through what I'll call an insight and foresight approach. With the vast psychosocial challenges facing us all, the new and exigent direction that accountable leadership might take for the future is clear. It is time for delivery. Finally, everyone will have to be in the learning mode. But the poor should not be asked to be more resilient than they have been, surviving despite all the barriers. Therefore, the onus is on informed and caring leadership to be more deliberate and intentional in changing suffocating practices which perpetrate vulnerability and unnecessary suffering among many. I'm concluding then that we may learn to use disruption as a grand opportunity to advance spiritually and to recognize what really matters, as well as to include the most vulnerable, the working poor, and the struggling middle folk in the society, and thereby facilitate the healing of everyone. I hope that what I've said and what this distinguished panel has shared will lead to some lively thoughts and ideas, and that there'll be lots of food for action after the breakout rooms. I think you will now see the two questions on the screen, and I will read them. In light of the many cultural and political realities which might inhibit or even prohibit the implementation of well-intentioned interventions and social investment initiatives, what approach or mechanisms could be applied to overcome them and still do good for the people who are the intended beneficiaries? Question 2, to what extent do you think leaders are helping or hindering societal healing post-COVID-19 by either their experience and wisdom or their own lack of insight and accountability. How can this be identified so that negative behaviors are stopped and positive ones are reproduced? You're assigned to your rooms already, and each breakout room will choose one of the two questions. So I'll hand over at this point.
As everybody is coming back into the main room, you can see the word cloud that has formed by all of the words that we collected from the beginning when we talked about which traits we collectively thought were needed for leadership in the post-COVID situation that we're in. So here we have compassion, empathy, trust, you know, really bolded out here. So I think that really is a nice visual for us. We will make sure we send that out as part of our report. So we can take away the word cloud and get some feedback on our smaller breakout sessions. So first I'll ask Marlene, if you would, could you share with us?
Yeah, hi everyone. We focused on question 2, but our conversation was quite broad. And Diego reminded us that we should probably really focus and zoom into what's working. Not only if we look at positively at what's working and what we can learn from what's working, it energizes us, but it also shifts our thinking and coming up with models that we can learn from. The other is also around the modeling by leaders. To build trust, to build credibility, and Lewis emphasized in terms of some of his experience how important trust and credibility is for communities to see, for others to see, and for others to model based on what we see. So just to also say that there's a process of appreciative inquiry where you can look into the things that are working and working well and to amplify those things that are working. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlene, for that feedback. Jamie, how was your session? Would you like to give us some feedback, please?
Thank you, Claudia. I think the main theme that really sort of ran through all the different pieces of feedback from the group was that, yeah, there are negative aspects that we could focus on, and sort of political leadership in some countries was remarked. But also that there is a huge amount going on locally across the world, you know, dealing with actually the same problems, and that's been one of the remarkable features of this crisis, and then how that may well now change things, and how life may well be different with people really taking a lead locally, and also. I think as the challenges of the economic impact, the health impact, and some of the issues that have recently come up, especially in the United States, but then expanded globally around the issue of race and social justice, it's how I think, you know, in a way, what is the role of philanthropy? I think helping these issues and helping groups and activists and organizations, and where perhaps we have overlooked issues for too long. And I think there's a realization that we do need to, all of society needs to do that, but particularly those that with in a special position, and you know, whether that's in business or philanthropy, can actually get involved to resolve, or at least make a difference and make a dent on some of these very stubborn issues which don't seem to go away and have flared up during this pandemic. So, but I think the main theme was very much local leadership has been the real positive aspect, without focusing on all the negatives, as I think somebody's already said before. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jamie. Next, I'm going to ask Henry to provide his feedback and also anchor, you know, the discussion that we've heard today.
So I can probably combine it a little bit together, But I think from our breakout, we sort of concentrated on question 1, but they've sort of overflow into question 2. I think the main things which came out is the overall effort that is needed when we face something as big as this pandemic, the need for international cooperation because of that interconnectedness where we are across the world, the huge need of solidarity that we need to have, reaching out beyond our own countries, and that's really looking also at really identifying well those who are affected most and to really hone in on that. When we work with organizations, choose wisely, so get strong organizations who are able to really deliver well, despite of all the sort of individual efforts and so on and so forth. There are organizations who are well equipped to do that. And very wise words came from Uruguay, where really the fundamentals in society, which to me is really a basis of trust that is within society and its leaders, made a reaction to something like a pandemic like this much more effective. So that came out of Uruguay, which I really didn't know. Would love to hear more about what happened there. So if I try and synthesize what I think has been said, is when we prepare ourselves for that, there is a few, you might call them prerequisites, that are necessary in order to be able to react well. And one is that we need a competent state apparatus. We need a government that citizens trust and listen to. We need effective leaders, compassionate leaders. We need a society that can organize itself through communities and through new ways. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we include youth in whatever we do in terms of the solutions. And I would love to hear at some point after this, maybe from Daniel, where youth has really taken a very proactive role to see what the results have been. And I want to leave you with just a few words around the pandemic and leave you with that. When you go out and see the empty streets, the empty stadiums, the empty train platforms, don't say to yourself, it looks like the end of the world. What you're seeing is love in action. What you're seeing in that negative space is how much we do care for each other, for our grandparents, our parents, our brothers and sisters, for people we will never meet, people with lost jobs over this. Some will lose their businesses and some will lose their lives. All the more reason to take a moment when you're out on your walk or on your way to the store or just watching the news to look into the emptiness and marvel at all of that love. Let it fill you and sustain you. It isn't the end of the world. It is the most remarkable act of global solidarity we may ever witness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Henry. That was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. We have about 5 minutes left before we leave, and I wanted to know if Ambassador Giorgio Maripodi or Danielle, would you like to say a concluding word?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what I was saying before, that basically we need to include the children in our discussion and benefit from their sense of sincere will and lack of cynicism and desire to contribute to the future, which is so refreshing that it being inspired by them in our conversation, I think would be a wonderful opportunity.
Sorry, since I have to leave right now, I just wrote everybody a message. I really appreciate everybody's presence and the way, as I said in my note, that focusing on one case then allows us all to reflect on our own situations. And I think that's the kind of cross-country, cross-everything dialogue that we need. So thanks so much.
No, well, first of all, I would like to thank Henry for this final speech, this conclusion. I could not imagine better words for concluding this work this afternoon. These are indeed thoughts that these are thoughts that I completely share. I mean, I was walking a few days ago on a Friday night, actually last Friday night, a few days ago, for the first time. I walked with my wife to downtown in Rome, in the Piazza di Spagna, in the Spanish Steps. I'm sure that you all are familiar with that. This was the first time in my life that I saw those Spanish Steps completely empty, with no one sitting there. But I have to say that I made the same reflection talking with my wife. I mean, this is people are showing discipline that maybe we could not imagine. And but the meaning of this is that we really to overcome this moment. That's this is what, and there was probably a strong conscience in everybody. So thanks for your words. I agree with that. I mean, it's the whole session was very interesting. I would have liked to answer to some of the questions. There was one very interesting about pollution. I don't know if the people who ask the questions to them, I mean, it's just sometimes you don't know figures. I mean, Italy is a country that has reached well in advance within the European Union the target for renewable energy that was set for Italy. I mean, it was set at 17%. We have now almost 19% of the overall energy in Italy comes from renewable, and this percentage has been growing in the last 4 or 5 years in a row. I mean, we are on the right path from that point of view. At the same time, and it's the European Union with the new Commission has set the Green Deal as the way we should all follow. I mean, this situation will improve. I'm optimistic about that. I hope, I'm sure that we will be able to work together to reach good results also in the fighting the pollution. And this pandemic is, and it will be, a lessons for all our society, also from this point of view. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you so much, Giorgio. So nice of you to address that question and to be with us today. And the other questions in the chat box, we will accumulate and we can dole them out, and we'll get some other interaction going after this. So we've come to the end of our time together. I would love to continue the conversation, but we'll think of a creative way to reconvene another time. Today we participated in something that's precisely the essence of Synergos, and that is bringing diverse people together to discuss commonalities and differences so that we can persevere through our hardships and flourish in prosperity. I thank you most sincerely, Hyacinth, Daniel, Giorgio, the Prince and Princess, for joining us today. I also would like to thank our Synergos team. The Global Philanthropy Circle team has been outstanding, supporting us, making it possible for today. Our production team, our executive office intern, Vincent Bardos, thank you so much. We look forward to welcoming you back to another Synergos virtual convening in the future. So I'm sorry that we have to end it like this, but that just means that there's more to come for the future for us. So thank you so much.